morning, Opening Pathways viewers. This is Tom LeNoble. I'm so glad to have you with me today, and I'm really excited. Today, I have Brian Wenke with me, and Brian is the executive director of It Gets Better. And this is an important nonprofit that I'm excited for you to learn about today on Opening Pathways. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. I need to know, first of all, as you tell us a little bit about it, It Gets Better. I also want to know what sparked the idea for you to start it.
Oh, well, I didn't actually start it, but I entered the space at an inflection point. But I'll give you a little bit of history first.
Please.
So It Gets Better is a nonprofit with a mission to uplift, empower, and connect LGBTQ plus youth around the globe. And we were born out of a viral social media campaign in 2010 on the heels of a suicide contagion that claimed the lives of young folks like Billy Lucas and Seth Walsh. And the objective was to if if we had 5 minutes alone with any of these young people who ended their lives, we may have been able to impart the wisdom to get them through to the next day, to give them some hope that a better tomorrow exists and that they have a life worth living. And the goal was just to get this message out as quickly as possible because there these were highly publicized deaths. And it was actually the same moment that gave rise to Glad Spirit Day. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you know, the goal was to get at least maybe a couple dozen folks to get out there, record their stories, get it out on social in hopes of reaching young people directly, recognizing that it was going to take too long and there were too many barriers to go through all the, permission routes, to get into schools and to engage with parents and so forth. And so the request was made publicly, and within 3 days, there were folks from around the world submitting their stories, all focused on hope and resilience and kind of affirming that yes, it is very difficult to be young and queer, but there is absolutely a life worth living if you can stick to your guns and stay focused and move on. And here is my story as an example of how that worked for me, and maybe it can work for you. So this was a campaign that was the first of its kind. I wouldn't say that it was the first like storytelling activation in the social space, but it was one of the largest. And it was the first time that YouTube, for example, was seen as not only this avenue for entertainment, but an avenue for social impact as well. And because of that, I do consider It Gets Better a pioneer in the storytelling for good space. Um, and that initial campaign won the founders an Emmy, a special on MTV, and a best-selling book. And when I arrived on the scene in 2015, about 5 years after the start of that campaign, it was an inflection point. There was a conversation happening about whether or not, well, have we done what we set out to do? And, is there a continued need for this organization? And while they were kind of pondering the future of this organization, PepsiCo came in with the Rainbow Doritos campaign, and all of a sudden there was this renewed sort of vigor around the campaign, and founders were like, okay, well, let's just see where this goes. And it was sort of like a confluent, wait, what is it? A confluence of events that brought me to this organization because I just finished my graduate studies. I didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And then I had a random person who self-identified as a mentor for me just push me into the arms of the founders of this organization. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do this. But I met them and they were the sweetest people ever. And they they're essentially giving me the keys to the car for this amazing
Yes.
organization that had this beautiful brand. steeped in positivity, and it connected with me on a very, very personal level. And so here I am, I guess 10 years later. Um,
Wonderful. So
yeah.
you got there in 2015 and
Mhm.
things started. And when did you say to yourself, this is my path?
Oh gosh, I feel like I think about that frequently because when I started with the organization, we were operating out of a windowless closet in the basement of the ACLU in downtown Los Angeles. I didn't have an office. There were three other employees. And for whatever reason, like I just loved it. And there was just I liked the energy and the idea that every every step that we took was going to be a step forward in a positive direction, no matter how big, because we just didn't have a lot, right? And there was so much untapped potential. I like to build things, and maybe I'm kind of like into that kind of startup energy because even 5 years in, it was very startup-y kind of, scrappy organization, just kind of responding to the times in real time. And it was just an opportunity to build something. And I've always been into things that I could build, even
Good.
as a kid, Legos, erector sets, and blocks, and all the things.
Great,
So,
great segue as because we're going to dig into learning a little bit more about Brian. So, what's the backstory? Where's the backstory? Where did it all come from? What do you think inspired you to do this kind of work? Did you have role models when you were younger? Tell us a little bit about Brian before.
oh gosh, well, I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, and at the time, it it was a pretty conservative place, right? And I don't think that, as I reflect on my life and look at the experiences that I had, for the most part, they were normal, but I was the victim of bullying, and I had a lot of challenges with coming out in high school, which I didn't come out in high school because there was nobody out in my high school. And I've come to learn that there were people who were, out in their minds, but were not out in public. Um, and it was a dark time for me. There weren't a lot of like resources for LGBTQ plus people, and I didn't know in my little suburban town of Dublin, Ohio, what was available to me. But then to find out what was available, you had to come out and tell people that you were queer, and I just was not ready for
Yeah,
that. But I did land in theater, and it took me all the way to my early 20s, but it was a dark time for me, and I never processed it healthfully, and it landed me in the hospital. I've suffered from depression for the vast majority of my life. I don't want to say it was because I was bullied, but it was a transitional moment for me, and I'm very fortunate. There were no crisis text lines, there was no Trevor Project, there weren't any of these organizations to call, but really when it came to my situation, the only thing I could do was call 911, because and I'm just very fortunate that I survived and have been given an opportunity to maybe reconcile those memories and those
yeah,
experiences and to make sure that other young folks don't have to go through that as well. It's not great, and it's a memory that I can't shake. I think about it almost daily, and it has colored my adult life in ways that, you know, I don't know. I often wonder, like, if that never happened, what would my life have been like? But, long story short, I've been able to choose a career path that allows me to tap into things that, kind of stir my heart. And, nonprofit is great for that. It's an industry
it
built on
is.
passion for causes. And, this one took me a while to build up enough courage to kind of face those demons to the extent where I could use that understanding of self in the process and what young people go through to make a positive difference in other young people that might be going through the same thing. So,
Yeah, yes, yes. I love this. And you're speaking of something that's dear to me and what my business is based on around risk and resilience and even reinvention of where we
Mm,
take these difficult times in our lives and we not only do we find our way through that storm, but we use it then to inspire and serve others, which is what you're doing today. It's really, I appreciate you telling us that story and sharing it with us. So I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style. You're running this organization and you have a staff. And so, what was the first challenge you had as a leader and what did it teach you?
Um, so it's funny because like I was so excited, and part of the reason like I it felt like the universe was just conspiring to help me reach my goal of leading an organization. But a lot of my expectations were based on the fantasy of what that was going to look like, like it was actually a little bit shocking when I landed in this role and discovered how isolating it is to be in roles like this, and how you don't always get the full story. I love my team. They're great. Trust me, it's not perfect. There are frustrations and I irritate them. They irritate me, but I understand why I don't get the full story all the time because there are power dynamics in play. There are feelings of self-preservation, and no one wants to admit that they made a mistake. And so it's like I always have to kind of look at the organization with soft eyes, not only to hear what I'm being fed from my team, but also what's not being said, and trying to navigate with without all of the information at my fingertips, which I don't like. I'm a very data driven. I like to see the numbers. I like to see a clear path to a successful outcome. And sometimes you just aren't given that luxury. So the isolation and never getting the full story are the two things that I thought was a little disappointing.
Yes. It's interesting how we do when we're in leadership roles and we people want to protect us or
Hmm.
keep us from information that can be really useful. And then
Hmm.
sometimes we're like, yeah, maybe I'm better not knowing that. So, I want to know if you ever had whether you took a personal risk in your life, or maybe it gets better that people don't really know about that you did.
A personal risk. Um, Well, I just turned 50 last year, and so I'm all in my head about yeah, my life and what I've done and the things that I've nurtured, and I have no regrets. Like, don't get me wrong, I have zero regrets. I've led a very beautiful and privileged life. I think the one thing that is that I think I sacrificed some relationships in pursuit of this. Not as in they were like, "Oh, I am not with you. I don't believe in what you're doing, Brian. I can't be part of this." More so about I haven't nurtured the
Yeah,
relationships that I feel like were deserving of being nurtured. And I'm very fortunate that I have a very small, close-knit group of friends that I would do anything for, but my family's in Ohio. I don't get back as frequently as I probably should. My parents are aging. I There are some people that, I always think I'm gonna call, I'm gonna reconnect, and I never do. And I have taken my mild obsession of my work, and I do feel like it has compromised the integrity of some of
I see.
my
Yeah,
relationships.
as often happens in life. What's been the biggest turning point for it gets better so far?
The biggest turning point. Oh, there have been a couple because like I feel like we're at an inflection point now. And so like the original campaign was the first peak. The second peak actually occurred during the pandemic. It was an unusual, unprecedented time, to say the least, but it was a very prolific time for It Gets Better because we play in the digital space. We are we are storytellers, and a lot of the work that we do is in social media and leveraging social channels to distribute this information. And so it was a very busy time, and it was one of the most incredible growth periods of the organization where we literally quadrupled our staff, we quadrupled our revenue at the time. And it wasn't sustainable. We knew that going into it because like we expected to see a big recalibration once the pandemic was under control and, people were actually able to go about their lives normally. And that, coupled with what's happening, with the current administration and the polarization of media and political discourse and all the things, it's been a quick sort of like recalibration. And we're at a point now where we feel like we have to move quicker than ever. There's always been this pressure, like we're racing against the clock. But I think now, we are looking at like, well, okay, we need to evolve again because, what we did to get through this up to this point was great, but it's not having it. We need to do something different because even though it's impactful, we could be doing more. And so I think we're at another inflection point to decide like where do we go next? And we're not looking at redefining our organization. We are still focused on LGBTQ plus youth and getting them through that very tumultuous period of personal developments, adolescence. I mean, we all go through it. It sucks for everybody, but for queer youth, it's a little bit more difficult. But how we do that needs to kind of shift a little bit
Yes,
to take
yes.
in where we are as a society right now.
So tell me, what did the early days at It Gets Better teach you about trust?
Trust. Um, there are there are many different ways to achieve a goal. And when I entered the organization, I had a very specific vision of how we were going to be successful. Um, but I also had a team of people that had their own vision of what they thought was going to get us from point A to point B. And at first, I think I held sort of like a stranglehold on my vision because I was just very focused. But then I quickly realized that it was going to make my life and the lives of my colleagues very difficult. And I wasn't going to see the kind of outcomes that I had anticipated or was going to take longer. And when I started just trusting in my team and stopped critically reviewing how they were achieving their objectives, my life got a lot easier. And trust me, like it's sloppy. Nonprofit work is sloppy. Even for-profit work is sloppy when you have like an idea of how things want to do, but you're managing people and they have a different idea of what that looks like. And so I really had to trust in my team and let them fail. And that was maybe something else I was trying to protect them from. Like, I don't want you to fail. And if you do it my way, then you're not going to fail. But you need to fail to grow. And we haven't failed hard. And although I might not like, how folks get from point A to point B, as long as they're achieving their objectives, that's all that matters to me. And it does take a lot of pressure off. I can
Yes,
control me, I can control my world and how I do things, but you really got to let people figure out their own way.
yes, yes. They'll surprise us each time, I think.
Yeah, and you might
Um,
learn something,
you
right?
might,
And you might realize like, oh, like maybe my way wasn't the best way.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. So tell me, when the stakes are high, how do you make decisions?
Oh, my team will say that I sit on decisions too long, but I do have a hierarchy of decisions that need to be made in my head. Given any given time. And they might think I need to make a decision quickly on one thing because it's important to them and it impacts their world. But in my head, it might be further down the list. How do I make decisions in high stakes situations? You know, I don't advise this in general, following your gut, but like I've been around the sun enough times to trust certain aspects of my gut. And I rarely go into anything blind. I'm a quick study. I read very quickly. I do make informed decisions, but I have gotten comfortable with the fact that you're never going to have all of the information. And if you are stuck on a decision, that means that the outcomes are so like competitive, like both outcomes could be okay, right? Or whatever outcome that will result from your decision, if you can't make it, if you're stuck, is probably not that big of a variance between outcomes. So like I have gotten comfortable making decisions without a ton of information, but just kind of I do think I have good instincts, so
Good,
I will
good,
say
good.
that.
So tell me, I want to know what impact you're most proud of, not publicly, but personally. What impact are you most proud of?
Personally, just over my career or within the context
Sure.
if it gets better, or what am I most proud of? That's a tough one. You know, I I'm most proud of my perseverance. I and I kind of toggle back and forth and I jokingly call it like obsession, but you know, when I look at my career, I feel very fortunate and very blessed to have had the career that I've had working on causes that were so intimately connected to who I was as an individual that it just helped me become a better person and helped me deal with joyful moments in my childhood and more traumatic events in my childhood. I guess just my career trajectory and how I've made decisions,
Yes. Yeah, it's great when we take these things that happen
perseverance.
to us and we turn them into something that we use words like perseverance for. It's really great for others to see that possibility. How do you define success beyond the metrics?
When you look back and you have no regrets. Yes, no regrets. And let me just say, like, there is maybe a little bit of delusion that's attached to that because a lot of people have regrets and it's really difficult. You read all of those, like you see all those TikTok videos and these are all the things that people on their deathbed are regretting that they never accomplished. And I don't regret much of anything. And to me, like, even though I am not the wealthiest person in the world, I live very comfortably and I have love in my life and I feel like I am successful, which is why I refer to most things in my life now as like champagne problems because I'm alive, I'm here, I have love, and I have no regrets.
Yes, we woke up today. Some people didn't.
We woke up, yes, we
Yes, we
woke up
woke up
today, and
today.
today is a good day.
Today is a good day. I tell people all the time, enjoy this day. I want to know what values are non-negotiable in the organization.
So these aren't organizational values that I will say. These are just things that it's a biggie for me, and it's just honesty. Honesty with your colleagues, honesty with yourself. I and it's very difficult for people to make mistakes and to be seen as weak. And it doesn't matter how often I say it. I don't care if people fail. I really don't. Just don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. Like if you can learn from that failure, it's a win for all of us. And you're never alone in this process. So like I am here as the leader of this organization to hold the accountability for everything. So, like, even if you fail in your project or your particular area or campaign or what you're doing, I'm failing with you no matter what. And so I try very hard for people to get people to be just honest with themselves. What do you know? What do you not know? And how can I help you fill gaps? And because I don't know everything, I think some of the best guidance I ever got in my career when it comes to like just managing a team, because there's a lot of ego involved in teams. There was this chief executive at the American Cancer Society, and I was working directly for her. And she was a firecracker. She was great, but she was very vocal about what she did not know. She's like, "That's why you're here," and she would point at me. She's like, "I can't do what you do. And so I need you as part of this team." There was no ego, and she was very vocal about what she didn't know. And I wish more people would be like that, because then you can find solutions easier and it's not shameful. And it just provides opportunity to learn something new, kind of build a different skill set. I just wish people were more honest with themselves. So I try, that's a huge value for me in the working world
Yes.
is
Yeah, it's that
honesty.
balance between being a leader and a learner is so important.
Yeah.
And then knowing that we don't have all the answers and that other people have some information and ideas that will serve us well.
I mean, the older I get, the less I feel I know. Like the less the less confident that I know anything. I mean, I know I have a career to back me up, but I don't know, life is humbling. And
Yes. Yes.
you just got to roll with it and just
Hey,
be just
I want to keep learning every day. I often say on my last breath, I want to be learning, and I'll probably be asking questions as that happens. So tell me, what is your boldest vision for It Gets Better in the next 5 years?
Oh, the next 5 years. Okay. It's funny you asked me that because we're literally about ready to go into a strategic planning process. But, for me, and I'll just pick one thing that I am all in on, and I can't remember if we talked about this offline, but this is controversial right now, but AI. You know, I don't, let me just be clear. I don't envision a world where we're telling like AI generated stories. Like that's not what I'm excited about. What I'm excited about is how it's going to boost our creativity and how we're able to get these stories out. And so regardless of the pragmatic priorities that we established during our strategic planning effort, I am aggressively going to be pursuing the
Yes.
integration of AI into our organization in ways that I hope will inspire other organizations to do the same. I do feel that nonprofits, particularly grassroots nonprofits that are trying to do so much with so little, there are real opportunities here to kind of elevate um, organizations that have no choice but to operate in the shadows sometimes. And, I think that there is a real opportunity for the nonprofit sector to keep on pace with the for-profit sector
Yes.
in this space. So that's what I see for It Gets Better is
Great,
really
great.
from productivity to mission delivery.
Yeah, I am really fortunate on this podcast. I speak to a lot of CEOs, tech CEOs that are focused
Hmm.
on AI. And I have to tell
Hmm.
you, I have learned so much. There is so many different
Hmm.
areas that it's being used now, from healthcare to psychiatry to the realm of psychiatry to
Hmm.
uh, so many different things that some of them I'm like, oh God, if we'd only had this 20 years ago, right? And there's
Right.
one CA I spoke with, and his whole concept is that AI is something as like a partner, a companion to us that
Hmm.
makes us more efficient. And I love this concept that makes us more efficient so we can do what we're really here to do and not be
Hmm.
focused on all of the things that we have to do to make that happen that makes us more efficient. So I'm excited for your organization looking at that because it is here.
Hmm.
It's not going away, as controversial as it can be at times. And I think that those of us that are willing to jump on the AI train will benefit much more than those aren't, because it will be happening. So tell me this. I'm interested in knowing what shifts are going on in culture right now in our world, our
Hmm.
country, whatever, that are lighting you up? What's happening that in the culture that we could all talk about stuff that's not lighting us up, but what is lighting you up that's going on in the culture?
Oh, every day there's something, right? And I just want to be I'm going to be very cautious with how I answer this question because like many people, there's a lot of concerns with the current administration. There's concerns about what's happening with federal funding, particularly for direct service organizations in our world, our world, our LGBTQ plus, community world. There is this fractionalization of media that is making it much more difficult to reach the audiences that you need to engage with. And so the the narrative that's being spun around particularly the corporate sector and their support of LGBTQ plus initiatives is probably the biggest thing that I'm feeling right now, that because I'm very pro corporate, a very significant portion of our revenue at It Gets Better is derived from corporate support. I like working with corporations, not because I'm a shill to the corporate way, but like I just they move quickly, it's strategic. I love the negotiations. I like coming together and finding creative ways to achieve bottom line objectives for our organization, for our partner organizations. I just like the art of that kind of relationship. But I'm disappointed right now with how many leaders in the for-profit world are responding to this narrative and borderline compromising their values. And I'm just wondering, like, you're doing this now because the going got tough. Like you're missing the whole point. Like we love it when you support us when everything is great, but like the definition of an ally is when you are also here during the bad times, right? So the corporate stuff has really got my attention. But honestly, all of this stuff aside, I mean, the world is always on fire. There's always something happening in the world. Social media and the 24/7 news cycle brings it to our doorstep every single waking minute, right? And so you have to learn how to kind of adapt to that and recognize that maybe you weren't meant to save this this group on the other side of the world. Like let's focus on what you actually have control over. And when it comes to organizations like It Gets Better, although we have to adapt to market conditions and we have to figure out new ways to navigate the world, something never changes. And decades have not changed the experience of what it means to be young and grappling with who you are and navigating adolescence and coming to terms with who you are. And that has not changed. And the pressures associated with that have not changed. The world has maybe changed, the external world has changed, but there's a thread that connects all generations of queer people, and that is that very tumultuous period of adolescence when you realize that you are different from everyone around you, and the thought of what could happen to you if that got out or if it were perceived in the wrong way is traumatic. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question. It was very
You
long-winded,
did.
but
Oh, it was a it was a great answer. I really like it a lot. It's so true. If you could leave the listeners with one challenge today, what would it be?
one challenge. Okay. So going back to my thought, I about specifically what a challenge that I have, not the same definition of what you're giving, but the challenge I have right now with the LGBTQ plus community and the organizations that support it is that we take a very reactionary position to a lot of the flack that's coming our way. We're always in this defensive position.
Yes.
And I wish that even though I do believe that that is necessary because there are certain things that you just can't let slide, but we also have to recognize that we're just holding the dam up, right? That's not changing hearts and minds by saying, no, you're wrong, we're right. But what I feel like the challenge I would like to present to our community is that we need to start allocating some time to creating the world that we want to live in and not just responding to the world that doesn't want us in it, but actually creating a new path that is based on a vision of what it's going to take us to thrive. Instead of saying either or, like, no, you shouldn't have rights. Yes, we should have rights. Saying, okay, well, what does a world look like where we all have rights? What does that look like? And what can we do to move us down this path while we're holding this other force at bay? So
Yes.
I think it's difficult. It's
Yeah.
hard. And
Yeah.
it's time consuming and it requires you to kind of like segment and compartmentalize a little bit. But I do think if we focused on where we could be
Yes.
in a best case scenario, that we'd maybe replenish some of our joy and excitement for who we are.
Yes. A time to think about how we're far more common than we will ever be different. I have one final question for you today.
Okay.
If young Brian were to watch this podcast, what would you tell him?
Um, I guess two things. One, don't take everything so seriously. There are three things. Count more leaves and touch grass as often as you can, and go to the gym more frequently.
Yes. Yes. And perhaps it gets better.
Of course, if that's what you're fishing for, I know it gets better. It got better for
I
me.
wasn't.
And I missed that opportunity, Tom.
That's why I took it for you, Brian.
Thank
Brian,
you. It gets
Brian,
better.
yes, Brian Wenke from It Gets Better, a nonprofit. He's the executive director there. Brian, please tell the viewers how they can find you and most importantly, if they were moved by this, how they might support you.
Yeah, we've got some great stuff going on. So if you want to learn more about It Gets Better, we are at itgetsbetter.org. That's our website, and we are on literally every major social channel with the handle It Gets Better. So we're the leading LGBTQ plus nonprofit on YouTube, Tumblr, and Twitch. We jumped into that space a couple years ago. We love gaming and our audience loves it as well. So if you want to learn more about that, and right now we have a summer reading challenge happening right now where we are focusing on a lot of queer authors and encouraging folks to read as much as they possibly can before school starts, and maybe raise a little money for It Gets Better in the process. But all of that can be found on our website and our socials. So
Thank
go
you.
check us out.
Brian, thank you for being on Opening Pathways today.
Thank you for having me.
And to my viewers, this is Tom LeNoble with Opening Pathways, and I'll see you next time.